Dr. Borjas, I find your proposition of flooding the market with a bunch of attorneys to be mildly appealing, but I'm not an attorney. But you know, in all seriousness, this issue, I've come to this committee probably with a different perspective than Senator Sessions in some areas and Senator Schumer and others. Part of this is because I've had specific experience with both ends of the spectrum about legal immigration. First, I want to stipulate that this committee is talking about getting immigration policy right that matches our supply chain of workers to the needs here in the context of the global economy that we work in. And that on the illegal immigration front, we need to deal with that separately. The question is then, what kind of policies can we put into place that are a comprehensive approach to immigration that really addresses a number of problems that we tend not to talk about when we get into these committee hearings. You know, how do we not, to use the hockey metaphor, oftentimes our immigration policy is about where the puck is versus where the puck is going to go. I'm concerned with the economic conditions of 2035 as much as I am of 2016. I'm worried about replacement rates that have to weigh into it and a number of other factors. I'm worried about global competition, and if we pursue a protectionist-oriented path towards immigration reform, it could be at the expense of it could be at our expense because our global competitors can take advantage of it. And I'm going to use North Carolina as some of my personal experience in North Carolina. I love the fact there are only two of us here because that means we can do multiple rounds. In North Carolina, we had, we're a state that probably is worth looking at in terms of a study for a variety of reasons. I was Speaker of the House there. We passed EVerify to try and do everything that we could, EVerify laws for agriculture and other workers, any business with, we had an exemption for some small businesses, but a large swath of the business population was subject to doing EVerify to determine that people were properly documented for employment, and there were penalties for businesses that didn't. We're also the only state in the nation that did not extend long-term unemployment benefits when that additional 26-week extension was offered to every other state, and every other state took it. We didn't. $750 million in unemployment compensation benefits were not taken into the state coffers, and we cut the monthly benefit by 25%. We were an outlier in the Southeast in terms of what we were paying. We cut the duration from 26 weeks to a maximum of 20 and a minimum of 13 weeks indexed to the prevailing rate of unemployment. Over the course of 5 quarters, we saw our unemployment rate go from 4th highest in the nation at 10.4% to the then national average of 6.4%. However, we still had a shortage of workers in many areas. So where did those folks go who got reemployed? I'm not really sure. But I do know that we continued to have a strain in certain areas, and it was at both ends of the spectrum. After a lot of these unemployment policies were implemented, after EVerify was implemented, we had a shortage in agriculture. We had a shortage in seafood picking. We had a shortage in IT. And Mr. Camerata, I come from the IT business. In North Carolina, we said, I think in your opening comment, you said we had a shortage of jobs, but in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg area, a group of people that I know, IT professionals, put together a group called ITology. Their sole purpose was to figure out how they were going to fill 1,000 unfilled IT jobs in the Mecklenburg County area. So I'm trying to, as we moved down the line, I was sympathetic or could find sympathy with almost everything one of you said. But I'm trying to figure out how we connect the dots in terms of creating a solution to the problems that I have in North Carolina. I simply have a backlog of jobs in certain areas. We've done things. As a matter of state policy, one thing that I agree with, I think it was Mr. Kalick that brought it up, was education policy. We're doing a pilot program in one county where we raised the dropout age to 18, created an analytics framework to try and identify students in 9th grade and 10th grade who looked like they were on a trajectory for either not completing high school or not going beyond it and not having deployable skills once they graduated, to try and engage them and figure out how we could vector them into a technical skill and ultimately maybe get them into community college or technical school. We're doing those sorts of things to try and make our American population better positioned to compete. But this stuff isn't working. And I think one thing that I'd like to do in this discussion, Senator Sessions, and I think you and I probably agree on a lot more than we disagree, is how do we actually get to a productive place where we kind of separate at the polls, where people come at it from an ideological perspective, and unless you get to their ideological end, then we get nothing done. And how do we get to a point to where we get the policy right? I get to rotate, so I'll be back in 5 minutes. So I'll leave you with this. We cannot have this discussion in a vacuum. If we do, then we will have the outcomes that we've seen in Western Europe. We will lose in productivity. We will end up seeing more and more dependence on government for livelihood, and we will not be the global competitive powerhouse that we are today. If we don't recognize that air travel, I think air travel is going to take off. I really do. I think it's going to be around for a while. People are going to travel fairly easily. I think the internet, as I said in a prior committee meeting, is going to take off. It's probably going to stick around. We're in a global competitive environment. If we make our policies based solely on what we think we need to do for the here and now, and do not recognize the global economic forces that will absolutely eat our lunch if we get it wrong, then we'll be back here 15 or 20 years from now having a very different conversation about the economic impact on immigration.